Welcome back to another lesson on Windows PowerShell. This is a beginner level tutorial series and today I will go over comparison operators. Comparison operators can be used to compare two values or two items or strings, etc. PowerShell has a wide variety of comparison operators which can be used in our scripting. Those comparison operators includes the equal and not equal to, like or not like, greater than and equal to, less than and equal to, contains and not contains, in and out, not in, etc, etc. So basically comparison operators, as it sounds in English, it compare two things together and then check against each other. Let's look at how comparison operators operates or works when it comes to the point case sensitivity. So none of the comparison operators are case sensitive by default. That means it doesn't matter if the operator is written in capital letters or simple letters. But each of the comparison operators has two identical variants and one that can explicitly state in certain situations is case sensitive, especially when you are comparing strings. So let's look at the case sensitivity and the comparison operator using two strings. So let's say I have a string called Sanuja. So you type a string like that. So Sanuja. So if you don't remember what are strings and what are the basics of Microsoft Windows PowerShell 7, you can go back to my previous tutorials in this series and watch that. So this is basically a string because it's between quotation marks. So you can have quotation mark this, or you could have quotation mark like that. So either one would work. And I'm going to put a comparison operator called equal, so which is EQ. So the operators always start with a dash like this. So we know it's an operator and we are using the comparison operator equal. And I'm going to enter again in here the same one, but I'm going to use the simple letter. If I run this part of the code, this line, what's going to happen in this terminal? It's going to input as either true or false. In this situation, it will output as true. The reason for that is, you go ahead and look at these characters in the string and compare that with these characters, and the comparison operator here is an equal operator, and it doesn't care that this is a capital Sanuja with a capital S Sanuja and this doesn't have a capitalized S in Sanuja. However, if you really want to force this operator to look at capital and simple, what we can do, we can add a prefix to that EQ operator, equal operator. So for example, to force it, if I put a C at the front, which is mean we are forcing it to be this compare operator to be case sensitive. So easy way to remember case sensitivity can be added with a C at the beginning of this equal operator. Now, if I run this part of the code, it will output false. There you go, it output a false. So again, this part of the code, it will output as true because it doesn't care that if it is capitalized or simplified. They're just looking for letters, and in this situation it will output as true, and the next situation it will output as false. So true, false, so true for this part and false for this part. Because reason for that is, with the C, we basically explicitly defining that particular operator to look at the actual letters in here and make sure that if there are capital letters and output accordingly as such. So case sensitivity is not by default baked into any of the operators in Windows PowerShell 7. If you want to force the case sensitivity in your script, you need to add this C at the beginning of your operators that looking at these kind of strings. Now, in addition to the case sensitivity prefix, PowerShell also has an explicit case insensitive modifier, which I don't know why anybody wants to use it, because by default this operator is case insensitive. What I mean by that is that if I copy this one again and put it right here, if I put the prefix I at the front, what it is going to do, it's going to force this operator to be case insensitive. But remember, this is also case insensitive. So line number 1 and line number 3 is doing the exactly same thing. To prove my point, if I run this code right now, it will result in true, false, true. So line number 1 and line number 2 are doing two different things. Line number 1 and line number 2 are basically doing, one is case insensitive, the case is sensitive, but explicitly defining insensitive also will result in true because it's doing the exactly same as line number 1. So 1 and 3 are doing the same thing. So in other words, however, as case sensitivity is already baked in, you don't need to use this, even though it actually exists there. It is extremely rare that you will come across examples or scripts where a scripter, computer programmer would use this I prefix, as opposed to you may come across a lot of scripts with this C prefix at the beginning of an equal operator, for example. So basically, what you need to remember is that none of the comparison operators in PowerShell 7 are case sensitive by default. However, if you want to force something into case sensitive, you can use this prefix of C, and that will force that behavior with the case sensitivity added to that particular operator. And again, case sensitivity is mostly associated with strings because that's where we basically look at case sensitivity, as opposed to numbers and other items. Boolean values, numbers, they don't care about case sensitivity anyway. So this is, you only going to see this when you're looking at strings. So that is how the case sensitivity work. So basically, this is something you need to keep it in your mind when you're working with PowerShell script. So let's look at comparison operators and arrays and how they interact with each other. I'm gonna clear the screen down here. So I'm gonna go in here. I'll put a quick comment line. So when comparison operators are used with a secular value, so what's a secular value? So secular value is a single item as opposed to an array. So in other words, these are secular values. When you have like a secular value, what's going to happen is the comparison results in either true or false. You actually saw that, like when I run this type of all these codes, it results in either true or false, true or false. The reason for that is these are what we call the secular values. So the comparison operator is looking at two different things, and either it's going to be 1 or 0 from computer language, right? So that's what we call a secular value. It's either true or false. It's there or not there. So when a comparison operator is used with an array or collection, you can actually always use the true or false, but sometimes you can. So the result of the comparison operator when we are using with array or collection is either it's going to match all elements. So that's how it's going to go and spit it out a message. So this is like what we call the array is like enumerated, or like it's comparing all values, and then it will return whether it's there or not. Like let's look at, like for example, like if I put 1 in here, number 1, and I put a comma, right? You can put a comma right next to it, or you can put a space and comma, it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to put just 1 comma. And then if I put a value called null is basically there's no value. And if I put an operator not equal to, and then if I put a null here again, if I run this part of the code, what that's going to result in is basically 1. So it returns 1. So it doesn't return true or false, it returns 1. So that means it's basically looking at the array items on the left hand side of the operator and comparing it to the right hand side of the operator, and if something is matching, it's gonna return as a value as opposed to something else. So it's keep returning 1 even though this value is not even in the list, still return 1. So like if I put like something like let's put 1, 2, oh sorry, so let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, and put GE greater than, oops, sorry. And now if I have on the other side, I have 3, and if I run this part of the code, watch down here, or actually I will clear this, and if I run that part, it will return 3, 4. So what happened is this did do something. So compared to any, not equal to, this actually went and found the greater than value from 3 and up, and it's printed. Like for example, if I put 2 here, it should print 2, 3, 4. So let's try that actually. So here you go, 2, 3, 4. So greater than. So like if I put less than, so it's going to print the one from 2 to the left hand side as opposed to the right hand side. If I print that, it's going to print 1, 2. See, 1, 2. So this is an array and it's comparing to this value, and then it's going to use less than or greater than like GE or LE, and it's going to print whatever the values from that point to left hand side or right hand side depending on how you set this thing up. And I mean, it doesn't need to be this way actually, so I can do like let's mix them, 3, 5, 4, 2, something like that. And if I print this, it still should print 1 and 2 because they're actually looking at the value, not the position of the value, actually value. So it doesn't matter at the front if we have a 5 in here, and if you put GE, it still print the same 1, 2. And if I put, sorry, LE, and if we put GE, it will print also number 5 because, oops, sorry, close that, number 5 because it will print 5, 3, 4, 2. So it's print from, it took the number 2 first, and then whatever, greater than that, it start printing accordingly. So, what you need to remember is comparison operators can work with arrays and collections, but the result may be differ based on how what things are being compared. In fact, I'm going to show you one more thing, how comparison operators are different in different situation. If I type a string 1 and if I type a string 2, oh sorry, 2, and if I remember, computer doesn't know what this means. Like computer doesn't know 1 mean number 1, it's just looking at as a string, right? So but I'm going to make sure it's human readable, and I'm going to say dash like. This is another operator, and we're gonna use something called star E as star E as our comparison leg. So what this basically going to do, it's going to print out 1, 3. The reason for that is it's going to take the strings on the left hand side, which is 1, 2, and 3, and it's going to look for anything that has E in it. The star E basically mean it just need to have E at somewhere in that string. So it's not looking for specifically E, it's going to look for anything that contains E. Like here's another example. See, it returns nothing. So if you print like this, it's going to return nothing. I'm going to clear this so it's going to be easy for you. See, I will actually copy this and put it again. So if you put just E in here without this star, it's going to return nothing. If you put that star in there, that means it's just looking for any term that contain E and that include 1 and 3. So it's going to spit it out those two. But the other one, not going to spit anything out because it's just looking for that specific E. So in other words, unless this one has something like like that, it's not going to print anything. If I do that, it'll print something. So I just want you to know that there are a lot of comparison operators, and you need to understand how each of these operators work, or test it out. If you don't know how it works, test it out when you are working with your PowerShell script. Remember, this is a beginning to PowerShell scripting tutorial series. So I'm just introducing you some of the items that you can look into. I'm going to clear the screen here again, and some of the items that you should know, right? The next one I'm going to look at is called the comparison to null. So that's the next one we will look at. I will move the screen a little bit higher up. So returning each matching value from an array can be problematic if the comparison is used to test whether a variable holding an array exists or not in a certain situation, right? Like, for example, let's create a array called comp array, because right now we are looking at comparison to null, the idea of comparing something to null. So if I have array called comp array, so which is comparison array, so if I put 1, you can call array whatever you like, and 2, so that's an array, that's a valid array. I can write a statement where we can write out in a way that it can compare two things and spit it out something with this array. So in other words, we can use the equal comparison operator, for example, can be successfully used to test that the value has been assigned to a variable called comp array. And to do this, you need to be a little bit creative. Again, I'm not going to go into depth of all of this creative way of working with PowerShell scripting in this tutorial. But to give you an idea, for example, like if I use a if statement, which I have not introduced to you yet, I will explain how if statement can be written. I'm just going to give you how if statement, this is an if statement. You don't need to know how to write it. But what you need to know, this equal operator, and I'm going to compare it to null. And then I can then put something called write host variable not set. This is something, whatever you want to, you can type whatever you like, and this code would be a valid code. What does it say? It says null should be on the left hand of the equal to operator. It doesn't really matter, it should work. And this will, this is basically running a code that's going to check this array for null values, and it's going to say not set. Actually, let's see what happens if I do it on PowerShell, this thing. So if I copy this, and whoop, it goes in here, I just basically paste it into my PowerShell command line, and it's looking if the array is empty. If it is empty, it's gonna say variable is not set, and that will spit it out that, right? Now, to test if this is valid, if it is still valid, if it is whole, you can create another array. I already tested this out, so I'm going to print it. No value in array. So in other words, this one didn't have any null values, so it didn't spit it out anything. But I use another one, which is this one. This array does have a null value. Now if I run this one, only that part, it's gonna spit it out whatever the text contained within it. So this is a little bit of a complex way of using a comparison operators to look at arrays and then compare that to get some output from in your script. So this array did not have any null value, so it printed out with nothing on it, right? Remember, it printed nothing. So if I run this, it will print. It just printed the array again. It doesn't print this term. and then if I print this, that will spit it out the value values in array. It's a little bit harder to see in the Visual Studio Code. That's why I actually pick it up this one. So if it's a bit harder to see, open your PowerShell 7 command window and space these things out, or like type it out in here. And if you paste it out, and you'll see the only thing got written out onto your terminal is the no value in array. It didn't print the variable is not set or variable not set or anything like here, because reason for that is that original array didn't have it. Oops, I didn't copy the whole thing. Original array didn't have the null value. So that's what I want to show you. So this is easier to see on your terminal window because it's not printing all the junk over here, the stuff that we don't need. It just print whatever in that needed to be printed. So see, no null value. So in here there are null values in here. So this should be say yes, there are null values, but this is a string. Whatever you can put it in here, you can just put it in there. And notice that you can put a string with double quotes or single quote, which I have explained in my previous tutorial. So what I want to let you know is this is just to give you the introduction to comparison operators with some little bit of more background information on how to use some a complex method to look at different items. Again, I'm not going to go how if statement works or a Boolean statement works, etc., in complex in detail. This is just so that you have a basic idea about what's going on here, right? So keep that in mind. So the next thing I'm going to show you is what happened. What happened. With the comparison. Operators. We are doing this when we have something like a Boolean value. Like for example, because the result of the comparison array is two null values, so basically it's going to return that the no value in array statement, right? But if we have something like Boolean, so Boolean can be written as like with a square bracket, Boolean. Boolean. That doesn't work. Boolean. Okay, I just want. Okay. Let me type the whole thing. Boolean. I guess you need to type the whole thing. So if I put Boolean and I put at in here, and if I make it null, and this will return. So I'm going to put. This should, in theory, return false. There you go, false. So this is a type of comparison. So yeah, this looking at a comparison of a Boolean null. But if we put Boolean null in here and then put a comma and put another null, this will return true. So if I go, there you go, it's returned true. The reason for this, because when you have only one null inside here with the Booleans, and what happened here is the effect of two null values can be seen casting to each other, causing it to be the true even though it's actually false. So keep that in mind when you're working with Boolean methods, Boolean things. If you have two null values, it'll cast into each other and it'll return true. So when you're writing scripts, that's another caveat that you should be aware of. It's a caveat in the how the PowerShell works. So keep that in mind. So again, I'm just throwing stuff at you like basics ideas of PowerShell operators, because I will be going over comparison operators when we are actually looking at real world scripting with Windows PowerShell 7, which will be a different lecture series that I'll be preparing in the future. So that's why you need to make sure to subscribe to my channel and stay connected, so that way you will get the notification when I start posting real PowerShell scripting tutorials in the future. So this is just a brushing of the basic ideas about comparison operators. Now this is a problem, right? So we don't we don't want to have a situation where that it's get, cast into each other. This happened with actually arrays as well. It does happen with arrays as well. So to avoid this problem, null must be on the left hand side of the expression, and then you can use an if statement to regulate it like that, and that's what we basically express it, and that's what we did it here. If we don't do it, in other words, if I don't use this if statement, you're gonna result in the issue where there's casting into each other, which I explained using the Boolean example right here. So that's what I'm trying to say. So sometimes you can just use the operator to check certain values or strings, because it doesn't work that way, because it's get cast into each other and return like this kind of situation. So that's what I'm trying to explain in here. So I'm gonna clear the screen because we will move on to the next item. Let's look at, let's quickly go over what equal to and not equal to operator. So as you remember, this is also another comparison operator. So the equal to, also known as -eq, which I explained at the very beginning, these guys. So equal to and not equal to operators perform they operate the exactly same way, and by default is case case insensitive. Remember at the very beginning I explained to that to you, and it always return either true or false statements by design. So for example, if I go 1-eq, oh sorry, I'm not typing. So let's see right here. So go 1-eq 1, and this should return true because 1 is in fact equal to 1. Where you go, it's return true, right? You can use with strings. So string, as I shown at the very beginning when I was talking about the case sensitivity. So if I go eq and if I go string, and this should return true because it's true, right? A string is a string and it's the same way. And you can also use casting. So for example, I'm casting this as a char, that's a character, and then we're gonna have a in here. Oh, maybe we can do that, that's fine. So it could be double quotation or single quotation, this doesn't really matter. And if I go eq, eq, and then if I put capital A in here, and if I run this, what would you expect? Remember, equal operator doesn't care about case sensitivity. So if I run this, why does this thing return true then? Because the reason for that is we are casting it as char. But if I run the same command without that char, it will still return true though, because it's still case insensitive, so it doesn't really matter, right? The only time you can make it case sensitive if you put a C at the front. Oops. It doesn't need to be capitalized. You could use it capitalized. That will return false, right? Just because of it is cast into a character char, it doesn't really make any difference between case sensitive. You can also do the Boolean values, for example, like let's say true, and then I'm gonna compare that to eq1, and if I run that, I can show you what it look like. So let's do it. There you go, it returned true. Yeah, so because true is typically it's by default equal to 1, and if I do false and eq, and let's see what this is gonna do. One moment. I have an incorrect statement here because that's not what I want to do. I want to do like that. So if I run this, and it will return true, because the reason that is it's just going to return true because it's comparing this false Boolean value to the value 0, and this is true value to the value 1. And let me clear that so that you can clearly see that both gonna return trues. So the true and false are like that. It is just gonna return true as such. And the same principles apply to when you are doing with things with not equal to. So for example 20, if I put number 20 not equal to 100, that should return true, because 20 is not equal to 100 for sure, right? So if I run it, yeah, that's right, it's true. I'm going to clear this again, and again if I run this, it should return, yeah, true. But if you know, if I do something like, you know, this not equal to that, and that should return true. But if this equal to this, dash should return false, because it's opposite, not equal to, right? False right here. This is false because it is actually equal to each other, right? And similar way, you can use the boolean as well with the not equal to. So if I use the boolean false, switch not equal to, and then if you use a boolean false, and then if you run this, and that will return false, because false is actually equal to false, not equal to false, because the boolean values doesn't always operate the same way when you're comparing to something else. So the last example, the false, the boolean with the string contains the word is false, therefore it's written false. So that's what happened. So PowerShell will attempt to convert a word, but the word is not empty string, and that will result in true as well. So if the PowerShell is trying to convert a word, but the word is not an empty string, you know, that will, in other words, basically cast into a true situation. So that's why it's doing that. And again, if you want to put something that is you know, string and boolean, what I want to let you guys know is that you need to make sure that you understand that the output is what you expected from your script, not something weird, and then you're trying to troubleshoot things. Be careful, be cautious with when you're working with operators and boolean values, right? So that's what I'm keep trying to hammer into your head. Again, we will go over this in my advanced tutorials on PowerShell. For now, just know that's something that you need to take care of. So let's look at another concept called like and sorry, like and not like. So it's like unlike. So the like switch and the not like switch or operator support wildcards. So it's kind of, wildcards mean like, it's, you know, you like that. So that character is basically a wildcard. It's like a star character. It's a shift number 8 on your US English keyboards, and that means that this character, this star character, matches a string of any length, 0 or more characters long, and matches a single character. They can do this, you know, they can do any number of long things, right? And then this one, the question mark character, can actually match a single one as well. I know it's kind of confusing the way I'm explaining. So for example, the following items that I'm going to show you next, they all should return true, because the way that the like switch is being used. So let's try. The cow jumped over the moon. Okay, it's a long string, and I'm going to put a switch like, and I'm going to say star, which is a wildcard, moon, star. What that basically means, because the star is on both sides, it will just go here and look for the term moon anywhere in this statement, and if we define it, it will return true. There you go. So that's what the wildcards do. And here's another example of this. Let's say hello world, right? Every programmer, every scripter at some point in their career, probably in school, use the term hello world. And if I use a switch like with the hello world, and if I use the question mark LLO and W stop, this will also return true. The reason for that is just, here you go, true. it's just this is specifically looking for a single character. So they are looking for two single characters, one character, two character, and LLO. So it doesn't matter what characters they are looking for. As long as there are two characters before LLO, it's going to return true. And with this is a combination of that. This is a wildcard with a W on it. And if I actually get rid of this W to make it simpler, and if I run this item, it will return false because it didn't look for the rest of it. So it's just looking for LLO. It's not looking for anything else, so it's returned false. But in this item, I'm not going to retype it here. You can look it on the bottom of the screen. In here, we have question mark, LLO, W star. And because it matches a specific condition, is returned true. But in here, even though these two question marks is looking for two single characters, but it doesn't know what character it's looking for. So, and it doesn't have that, rest of the things, attached to it, like the wildcard associated with here. So it returned false. So the creative way of looking at this thing is basically that, the wildcard star that will look at anything after that W and then return the false value. Now, it's true value. Now, like this is returning true. Now you might ask, like, why do I even need to put these two question mark? Why can't I do this? Well, if you do that, that will return false because these two question marks are holding, in other words, the two letters H and E and checking that this entire thing against this string. So that's why this returns true, but this returns false because we didn't have those two question marks in it. So that, in other words, that question mark character matches a single character, and that will result in the true false accordingly. And another one I can show you is if I have an empty string, and if I put like switch, and then if I put a string with a star on it, so one side is empty, the other one has a star on it, and if I run this, it should return true because this is a wildcard and there's nothing in it. That's fine. The wildcard will result in that. And if you look at something different like a not like, so if I put not like, which has the same behavior as a like comparison operator, but it just happened to be not like. It's the opposite of that. It's a question mark star. And if I run this now, it will return true. So because this is it's looking for a character and something, and any character, right? It's not true, so the not like will return it return true. It's character and it could be anything, right? So because the character could be anything, because there is no characters, it's still return true. That's what I'm trying to say. So it's still return true. Like if I put an A in here, just a character, it's return false. It returned false because it's not like each other, right? So this is some caveat that I want you guys to learn. I hope I'm not confusing anyone. Sometimes I'm a little bit confusing when I look back at some of my tutorials. It sounds pretty confusing. Again, learning fundamentals without using actual scripts, without using actual examples, is a little bit hard. But if you understand these fundamentals, it's gonna make it so much easier for you to learn complex scripting by yourself rather than trying to troubleshoot and try to figure things out, especially when things go wrong and you have to troubleshoot as your own script. If you understand these fundamental concepts, it would be much easier for you to understand what went wrong on your script when you're looking at it. In other words, I'm introducing the most basic ABCD of A to C of Windows PowerShell. And if this is not for you, maybe you shouldn't watch this tutorial, but if it is for you, it's up to you. Just go ahead and watch the whole thing. I know this sounds pretty repetitive, but just that's the reason why I do this. If you take a basic fundamental PowerShell course, paid course, this is what they would do actually. So PowerShell turns expression with like switches and not like switches into regular expressions, and then they start comparing against each other. So that's what we did up here. Next thing I'm going to look at is the greater than and less than. So it's another switch, and when comparing numbers, each of the operators, such as the greater than operator, or that can be use it in greater than or equal to as like a GE, that operator, or GT. Oops, I don't want that. Delete. Okay, let's see. So GE, or the other operator is GT. Again, I don't want that. Yeah, sometimes so GE or GT, those are the two operators. So the GE is greater than or equal to, and GT is the greater than, and the other one that I want you to know is less than is LE. This is, so less than or equal to is LE, and the other one is LT. So LT is the other one. LT is not less than operator. So these are basically the greater than and less than operator. So this is the greater than or equal to operator. This is less than operator. This is the less than or equal to operator, and this is the less than operator. And these are very simple operators as it sounds, and I can show you what it what it can do with some few examples. For example, if I use 1, which is a number, and if I put GE greater than, and then if I go 1, and this should return this is greater than or equal to. So the greater than or equal to, this should return true because it's true. So 1 is greater than or equal to 1, and it returns true. Right here, it's returned true, right? So GE is gonna return that because GE stands for greater than or equal to. Now I can give another example. So let's have 2 and use the same idea, but except let's look at GT, which is GT stands for greater than, and if 2 is greater than 1, and it should be true, and here you go, it's true. And if we switch them around, if 1 is greater than 2, it's going to return false. There you go, false, because 1 is not greater than 2, so it's returned false when you had that way. So this is 1 is not greater than 2, so it's returned false. So as you expected. Here's another one, 1.4. So it's not a whole value. So I'm going to pull LT. Again, LT stands for less than, and with that switch I'm going to check with 1.9, and this will return what? So it's 1.4 is less than, right? LT stand for less than is 1.9, and it is true, and it's going to return true because 1.4 is in fact is less than. And again 1.1, and I can put LE less than or equal to 1.1, and this is also will return true because these two are less than or equal to true. And if I now change this value to this, is 1.2 is less than or equal to, yep, that's true. But what happens if I change this to like something like that, and that will return false, right? There you go, false, because 1.4 is not less than or equal to the 1.2. So this is one of the easiest operators that you can use to compare two values, right? It's exactly what it sounds like. The string comparison with these type of operators places a 0 first, then each lowercase and uppercase character in turn. So if you want to use these greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to, or less than, these 4 operators with strings, because these are all numbers that I just showed you, right? What that's going to do, it's just going to look at the string, and it's going to do this automated calculation where they put 0 at the very beginning of the string, and it start adding numbers, and it'll go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then start putting English alphabet characters like the English mean like British, American, Canadian English characters. So what I mean, well, here you go, like I just type it on somewhere else and I just paste it here. So if you use these values with strings, so the above with strings, this is what it's going to result in. So the computer sees this 1 2 3 with a string. Let's say, like, for example, let's use a string Sanuja, right? This is 0 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. That's how it's going to compare, because the greater than or less than equal to, these are mathematical comparisons and not used with strings. So that's why when you are using this with a string, this is what you're gonna get, and this is what the computer actually sees when you try to compare using these particular switches or comparison operators. So the problem with also this is the English alphabet and the US keyboard of the English, British English, Canadian English, American English, Australian English comparison. With cultural variance in characters, for example, like certain words that falls between like certain other certain letters that falls between other letters, like for example this character which you see in certain languages that falls between capital A and B, it get all mixed up and etc, etc. For example, Cyrillic, Greek, Roman alphabet have certain values after Z as well. So Roman alphabet have more than Z. They keep going on Roman alphabet. Oops, sorry. Undo. So after Z, you have a bunch of stuff going after Z. So it all get a little bit more complicated when you are using these values above. And I can show you what I mean by that. So let's try Apple. This is using the English, American English, and let's use it. Something like that. And if I use pairs, what would you expect this to return? Apple and pairs. Remember, it just take a string and put these numbers on, and then take a string and so what it's going to do, A is going to be like 0, and PPLE is going to be where it falls in here. It's keep adding those things together, and then P starts somewhere else. So it's asking if the Apple value is going to be less than the LT basically less than the pairs value, and P is way over here, right? P is somewhere in there, right? Because that's how the string is looked at, and it's going to return basically true. There you go, true. Of course Apple is greater than sorry, less than pairs, right? Again, but if I put APPLE, I mean, it's not intuitive, that's what I'm saying. Of course it is, right? And if I put pairs like that, now if I run this, let me see, I don't want to run the whole thing, I just want to run these two, run, it's also to return true. So capital A is still lower than the pairs. Again, you can try something like pairs, and then whoop, then you put LT, and then you put apples. Apples, yeah, pears and apples, and then that will return what? False. That is false, because this, if you want this to be true, you need to put GT, because bear is going to be greater, because apple start way up here and the bear somewhere after this, right? And then if you it will return true right here. So it's what I'm saying is that these are not if you greater than or equal to greater than or greater than or equal to less than or equal to less than, these are used with numbers on most occasions. You don't use it with characters, especially with non-English characters like this one. It will return true, and here you go, it returned true, because reason that is that's not what we use these kind of greater than or less than or equal to operators. But if you see them in a script, or if you use them in a script where you are using with strings, this is what the computer actually sees. It goes to the string and assign numbers in according in this order. A will have 0, B will have 1, etc, etc. and then compare together. So for example, if I put A in here, and if you expect A to be greater than, let's say, B, and it will return false because A is 0, B is 1. But if I flip them around, B here and A there, it will return as true, and here you go, when we switch around, it will return as true. So what I'm saying is, this is something that we don't use with strings typically, these items, but these less than, greater than, or equal to operators, but you can do so if you choose to. And when a case sensitive operator, such as if we make one of these operators, let's say use something like, let's say, bat, and if I use case sensitivity operator, which is a C, remember, which I introduced at the very beginning, and then we'll go with bat, this is become case sensitive. But remember, they are assigning numbers, and the B, capital B, come way down here, so this is going to return true. It's false in terms of, like, in your logical mind it sounds like false, but it's not false, because reason of that is this simple B is right here, capital B is way after that, so this become true. But if you switch something else, if I do something like that, and then case sensitive LT, and if I do this one as cat, and if I run this, and that will return also true as well. Because again, because capital B comes before the C, capital B is before the simple C, it's become return true. The similar way here is the simple B is before capital B, and then it will return true as well. I know it's a little bit confusing. If you are confusing about this, you can just pause it and rewatch what I just explained here. And this is important that you understand, especially if you're doing like some advanced scripting and stuff like that, especially if you want to troubleshoot your script and you don't understand how these things work, it's gonna get really confusing. Again, typically greater than or equal to, greater than, less than or equal to, less than, all of these are typically used with numbers only in most scripts, but you might come across using in the strings, and this is how the computer sees strings when you have those operators in between strings. So that's what I'm trying to explain in here. And having said that, let's look at the next item that we will learn today. So that would be something called the contains and in. So the contains operator and not contains operator, in operator and not in operators are used to test content of arrays. So that's what contains operators and in operators are using. So operators I'm trying to introduce to you is the contains. Contains, not contains, in, and the other operator I'm going to introduce you is not in, which is opposite of in. So these are the operator: contains, not contains, in, and not in. So those are used with arrays. So when using, for example, contains or not contains, the arrays must be on the left hand side of the operator. So in other words, when you're using these two operators, when you're comparing, the array has to be on the left hand side, otherwise it won't work. What I mean by that is, let's create an array, say 1, 2, that's an array, and then say contain 2, this will return true, or like 1, 2, 3, and switch contain, operator contains, contains, and then if I put 4 in here, and that will return false, because 4 is not contained within this array. But remember, the array is always on the left hand side, and what we are trying to look for in the array is the right hand side. Just like when you're reading English left to right, hey, we have array 1, 2, does it contain 2? we have array 1 2 3, does it contain 4? So this should return as true. Yeah, it returned true. And then if this is returned false, it returned false. So again, the array in this situation has to be has to be written on the left hand side, and whatever you are trying to search for in that array with the contains comparison operator has to be on the right hand side, and here you go, that's what it returns as expected. When using in and not in, these two with the arrays must be in the right hand side. So this is important. I'm gonna type that thing out. Arrays has to be on the left hand side. Okay, when you are using the operators contains, so with the contains and not contains. But if you are using for the in and not in, the arrays has to be array has to be on the right hand side, because that otherwise it won't work. So for example, 1 operator in 1 2 3, it will return true, or 4 operator in 1 2 3, it will return false. So I'm going to do so if I run this, it will return true because 1 is contained in 1 2 3 array, and this will return false because 4 does not contain in 1 2 3 array. So again, if you are using contains, think of it from the English language point of view. You have to have the array on the left hand side, because we read in English from left to right. So in this array 1 2, does it contain 2? In this array 1 2 3, does it contain 4? But when you're using in, you have to have the array on the right hand side, because reason for that is, does the value 1 is in 1 2 3 array? Does the value 4 is in 1 2 3 array? So when you have an array that you're using the contains comparison operator, the array must be on the left hand side. When you are using a operator called the in operator or not in operator, it has to be on the right hand side. So this apply to not in as well. So if I put so give me 2 seconds. So this one it returns false because true is 4 is not contained in here. But if I put not in here, it will return true, because in fact it doesn't, the 4 does not contain, does not in, it is not in the right hand side array here, right? So the same here. So contains, not contain, the same thing. If I put here, if I run this, it will return false because obviously the 4 is not contained in here. But if I put not in here, it will return true because we are actually looking for the false opposite of contain, and then it will return true as such. So keep that in mind. Whenever you are comparing an array using contains switch or the operator, the array has to be on the left hand side. When you are using the switch or the operator in or not in, it has to be on the right hand side array. So that's an important concept to remember. So that's everything for that. So the next one I'm going to show you is called the match and not match. So match and not match are comparison operators that can output either true or false, but there are there's a little bit more to with like the values that we can discuss here as well. So the operators that we are looking at here is called the match and not match. So again, if you are familiar with English, well, it's exactly what it sounds like. The match operator, not match operator, basically used mostly with strings or regular expressions. An example of this would be I'm not gonna type the whole thing. I'm gonna quickly paste it here. So I wrote a statement on off the screen, which I like tutorials by Sanuja and Net IT Geeks, and I'm gonna match, Sanuja, and this will return true. It's so you don't need that part. It's just basically not. So this will return true. Why? Because the Sanuja is contained within this string. So if I run this code, it return true. But if I put here Manuja, right, and if I run it, it'll return false. The reason for that is this is wrong. I'm gonna redo this. So if I run this as with Sanuja, right, it will return true. If I run this with Manuja, who is my brother, by the way, and he's helping me with some of those items, so it'll return false. So Sanuja is contained within this string, so it returns true. The Manuja does not contain within that string, it'll return false. It's looking for the entire statement. Anuja is there anyway. I just simply changed one letter to switch between me and my brother, but it's looking for that entire string, so it'll return true or false based on that. Another thing you can do with this comparison operator match is that you can use the plus symbol to, and because it is a reserved symbol like the plus in this type of operator, and it indicates that it is followed by one or more spaces. Like for example, what I mean by that, like if I put a statement, let's say I like, remember double quotation and single quotation are both will give you a string. If I match, and if I put I plus like, right, again you can use double quotation or single quotation, it doesn't really matter. So you can do like that or single quotation, but make sure if you use double quotation, it's double quotation on both sides. If you use single quotation, you use single quotation on both sides on that string, right? Doesn't matter what the next string is, but stick to one when you're working with, when you're writing script, because otherwise it's going to confuse everybody. It will eventually confuse you as well. So if I run that part, I'm going to clear the screen actually. If I run this part, so this is going to return true because it's going to not only going to match I, it's going to match I and the like term, and there's a space in between. This dot is basically a space. When I highlight it, it shows that dot in Visual Studio Code. Again, if you want to know how to set up your Visual Studio Code to work with Windows PowerShell, I have already done a tutorial on that. That's one of my first 2 tutorials on this series. Go ahead and watch that. Otherwise, it'll return the true on your PowerShell the terminal, something like this. If you run the same thing in here, it'll return true as well. So that's it shows that this plus sign is a special character that can be used to compare values, a string like with more than one term in it. Remember, match and not match supposed to return true or false. So it's always gonna return true or false, right? Well, not really, but like other comparison operators, if match or not match is used against an array, however, they will return each matching element instead of a false. So what do I mean by that? Let's create a array. So I'm gonna create an array. So let's do 1, comma. The array could have any string. I'm just gonna say 1, 2, 3. So make it simple. 2, comma, and then let's say 3. Right. So I'm gonna use the switch match, match. So match, and I'm gonna match it to E. So okay. Now, if I run this, it's not going to return true or false. I'll show you what I mean by that. Oops. So if I run this, it's going to return 1, 3. The reason for that is just like other operators, arrays behave differently with match and not match operators. It is just basically matching anything with E in it, and then it's going to print out those values or the strings in that array. And if I put not match in here, I expect it to print the ones or the only one term that does not have E in it, which is 2. So remember, when you have match, anything with E in this array that got printed, which is 1 and 3. When I put not match, anything that does not contain E, such as this 2, got printed out. So that's how it actually operates with arrays. And it's just gonna do it the whole thing. But here's another situation that you might come across that is actually useful with match and not match, is you want to compare a set of values, but you don't want to type the entire values. So for example, let's say I have something, I'm gonna leave a space here. Let's say I have something like 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, and I'm going to use the match operator. match match operator. I can use regular expression to actually get a set of values and see if those set of values actually exist or match contained within the left hand side of what I have here. To do that, again, I can start with this, with the regular expression, square brackets, and I'm going to look for 0 to 4, and I'm going to put a star in here, and it's going to match anything with 0 and 4, and it's going to print true, because yes, it does contain 0 to 4 items between 0 or 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. So anything, if it is matches, it can return back as true. So this is what a regular expression can do with match and not match comparison operator. Now, having said that, I introduced a little bit of a regular expression in this lecture. However, what we did here with the regular expression is just touching the surface of what regular expressions can do. The brackets basically indicate it is a regular expression here. I'm not going to go into depth of how regular expression works. In this situation, it basically matches the characters from 0 all the way to 4, and repeated 0 or more times. This is basically saying repeat the process 0 or more times, and that's what this is doing. It's a special way of writing things. I'm not going to explain this in depth right now, but I will cover a separate lecture on regular expression in the future. But keep that in mind when you're working with match operator. You can use regular expression. Also, one of the unique thing about this is that this will result in saving this value to something called the matches variable. We didn't create the matches variable, but it will automatically save the values into each matches variable, the true or false. The reason for that, so for example, if I print matches, right, that's a built-in variable. And if I print it, it prints 0 and print 1 2 3 4. So that's basically a variable that is automatically created by Microsoft Windows. That's something that you need to keep that in mind. And this apply to other things as well, like for example, the switch, not the regular expression, so the match switch or the comparison operator always create that variable in the background. For example, let's look at this one, and I will modify that to match, and I will print. I will also print this, okay, and then I clear this. Oh, here you go. So if I run these two code, it not going to do the match in here, the match variable, but it does have that previous one right here, this regular expression 1 2 3 4. So that's something that you should know. It's something you can do with match, and it doesn't, it does that variable automated creation in there. Again, I will go over this later. Like I don't want to confuse you. I think I already confused you. But the thing is, let's say now we have this variable, right? So if I print this variable, it'll have 1 2 3 4. So the next one we're going to look at is called the it's called the replace. So just like match operator or switch, the replace operator performs the exact what it sounds like in English. It's basically replaces. So for example, let's say I have something like this. I'm just gonna paste it because it's much faster. So I have A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, and I want to replace A with C. And if I run it, it replaces as CB, 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 CB. Or to make it easy to see in here, let's replace it the capital C, because strings can have capitals or simples. There you go. It has it's case sensitive strings, so it'll replace that A with capital C. So the replace basically the replace switch basically replaces a value that is matches with what we are asking to match, and then replace it whatever what we are asking to replace. So the basically the syntax for this is it's basically you have a value, and then we have the replace, and then we have whatever we are matching. So we're gonna match something, right? match. So matching value, and then we're gonna put the replace value in here. So this is what you need to remember. This is the way it is. So we have a values in here, whatever, on the left hand side, and you have the replace switch or the comparison operator, and then we have whatever we are trying to match and whatever we are trying to replace. Now what happened? So what happened if we just leave out this thing as empty like that? So what's going to happen? So if I run this, it basically drop that A completely out of this string and just print B, 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 B. If we actually completely delete this and then run that, only that part, so there's nothing after that, it does the same thing. So after this comma, you have to tell it to what it needs to be looking for to replace. So if I put an X in here, for example, if I run it, there you go, it's X. Oh, if I can XD, if I want to put it, it's just going to replace with 2 characters with 1 character. So it's XD, XD, XD. But if you just leave this out as empty with the replace comparison operator, what's that going to do is basically it's gonna drop that A completely, or you can just not say anything at all. So if you just want to leave it empty, I'll just not leave it at all instead of doing this, because it just remove another character. So this is this, drop the A's, and this is also dropping that A, because we are trying to replace the A with nothing, and nothing is nothing. So that means it's just resulting in that. So that's how the replace operators work. Again, just like before, the replace operator can be used with complex operations with Microsoft PowerShell. An example with the regular expressions with example would be like something like that. Oops, it's very complicated. It looks very complicated. And then you can run these codes, like the complexity get much more increased, something like this. This is something that I wrote. So if I run this, it's still valid. It's just gonna be replacing. So it took the value 1 2 3, which is like an array, and it replaced with Sanuja, because I'm replacing 1 2 3 all equal to Sanuja. So all the value 1 2 3 now in being replaced to Sanuja. So in the preceding regular expression with that, the star on it basically matches a 0 or more any of the characters, 0 or more characters, and each capture group is expected to be separated by a comma value, which we have that as a comma value. This is data group that being separated, and then it'll basically gonna get spit it out with whatever the values that need to be replaced in here, is in the replace operator. Again, forget about this for now, because I will go over this in the future, how the regular expression work. But just know that the regular expression can do a lot more than just replacing just one value with another. You can do like multiple values in one go, and etc, etc. The next one I'm going to talk about is called the split. So let's move on to that one, because we are almost near the end. So the split, which is the final operator, comparison operator, that I'm going to introduce to you today in this long lecture, is basically splitting a string into an array, or using a regular on a regular expression, pretty much. So you can use the split operator, split string into an array, in other words, using regular expressions. For example, let's say we have a comma bc comma 3d4, and I want to split this on some kind of a special thing, right? So let's say I want to split this thing on the comma, because that's an easy split. This is the first thing you're going to learn in school with the split operator. You're splitting among these comma, because that's a very common split. So if I run it, there you go, it split with a, b, c and 3d4. It was split based on that comma. They go through this, and as soon as I see the comma, I split. It goes through the comma, split. Again, left hand side is being compared against the right hand side splitting character, and it splits. Now you can split between others, like you can use the same thing, but let's split on b. So what that's going to b, and what that's going to do, it's basically going to split the whole thing on b. So see, it's just get rid of the b, but that's where the split happened. And then we have c comma 3d4. So whatever the split character on the right hand side, it's going to get eliminated when it start splitting and spitting out up here, when you are using the split comparison operator this way. So for example, when I use b, the b is gone from the split items. When I use the comma will be gone, because the a, b, c and 3d4, the comma is gone, because that's where the split across. So that's how the split operators work when you have that single item. Now, just like before, what if we want to use the split operator with regular expression, because you want to split among many different things, right? You can do that. Like an example of will be, let's try a, 1, b, 2, c, 3, d4, right? Now I'm going to use a split operator here, but I'm going to use a regular expression, which is 0 to 9. It's easy to know that you're using regular expression, because you always have this this character, this square bracket. And if I run this is using regular expression to split a, b, c, d with numbers 0 through 9. So remember the splitting characters don't get split out when you're using split, and that's what we expect, and that's what happened here. So it didn't print 1, 2, 3, 4, because those are the split items. So it just print a, b, c, d. So that's how you can use split with the regular expression. Again, if you want to know how the split works, the expression condition is this. Oops, sorry, so you have a value on the left hand side, you have the split operator, then you have the matching information, what we are trying to match to split, and you can put the maximum number, and there are some split options associated with this, which we will look more in detail in the future. But what that basically means, what this syntax means, is you can have something like this, which is a huge complex thing. It's get first, second, third, and if this is a valid expression, by the way, if you run it, see, it's valid, no error messages happen here. And it can do similar type of complex operations, a little bit of a complex operation using that split comparison operator. Again, I will go into depth of how this thing work in the future, for example, maximum number in here, right here, can be used to limit the number of split operations performed by, on the string. So like after this, if you put a comma, like in here, I'm gonna clear this screen to give you an idea about a little bit of complex operation. If I put a comma in here, and then the maximum number will be 1. No, let's do the one beforehand. So comma in here, put a 1. So if I run this now, it's only gonna it's only gonna run once, so that's why it didn't split. So like there's a lot more you can do with this thing. Like you can put it into you can work with splits as well. Like for example, you can work with arrays and things like that as well. For example, let's do that, and let's say split test. And if I equal this to, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then if I put split, so let's do comma and comma 2. So this is using similar to this. So this whatever, so if I run this should be valid actually. So run, so there are no error messages, so that's a valid statement, right? Now if I print this, what that's going to do is it's going to print whatever the results in there. There you go, 1 split between 2, 3, 4, 5. So it split 1 right here with a comma, and then it split 2. It didn't split anything else. It's only splitting 2 positions. If I split 3 positions, if I run this, split 1, 2, and then stop splitting here. Remember, when I put 1 position here, it didn't split anything because it didn't ask you to split anything in here. If I put 2 in here, it will do the same thing. It will go and split at once and then stop. See, it will split 1 and then stop. Because in PowerShell, remember, position 0 has nothing, right? So position 1 is actually right here, and that's why position 1 is right here. There's nothing to split, and position 2 is here and is split at 1A, and in this is splitting at 3, but we are forcing it to put it into a variable. So you can do things like this with the split comparison operator. Again, I'm not sure if I'm confusing you guys, because sometimes I'm not a really great instructor, but what you need to understand with the split is this syntax is being used for split operator to do more things than just splitting with the one single character. So by adding that split option, you can denote, not instead of just using this one character and split everything with that character, you can say how many times or how many places it needs to split with the comma and this particular value operation. Again, if you want to learn a little bit more about these operators, I will leave links in the description as well in this video as well. And as you can see, the comparison operators are very powerful set of operators, because not only it can be used with this type of built-in functions, but you can modify with regular expressions. You can have certain switches and options available to you contained within it. And with these operators in conjunction with other powerful PowerShell operators, you can make very complex lines of code in your script. So I will go over PowerShell scripting examples in real-world applications in my future video series that will explain how we can use these comparison operators that I have explained way from the top all the way down here. And how these can be useful in certain situations and certain specific configuration options and etc in the future. So please make sure to thumbs up this video and subscribe to my channel, and until our next tutorial, thank you so much and have a nice day.